The renovation crew had been upgrading Riverside Elementary School's basement storage for 3 days when they discovered a sealed room behind the old boiler area. It was October 8th, 2025, and 43-year-old contractor David Martinez broke through the concrete wall to find a small space that wasn't on any blueprint. Inside, on the dusty floor, lay a human skeleton still wearing a teacher's cardigan, a lanyard with an ID badge around the neck bones. Within hours, DNA would confirm what the small Wyoming town of Riverside had feared for 21 years. They'd finally found Emma Parker, the beloved elementary school teacher who vanished while preparing her classroom on November 12th, 2004. Her classroom had been left with lesson plans on the desk, papers graded and stacked, her computer logged in with an email half-written, as if she'd simply stepped away to get supplies. The truth was far darker. She'd been murdered and sealed in a basement room by someone she'd worked with every day, someone whose romantic advances she'd rejected, someone who'd continued working at the school for years using her memory. For 21 years, children had learned in classrooms just above, never knowing their beloved teacher's body lay hidden beneath their feet. David Martinez was an experienced contractor at 43 years old. He'd been doing repairs and renovations for schools and public buildings in the Wyoming area for 20 years and had worked on dozens of educational facilities. Riverside Elementary School wanted to replace their old boiler system and completely renovate the basement storage area. The school had been operating since 1985 and needed significant upgrades. David and his crew started work on October 5th, 2025, expecting a straightforward week-long project. On the afternoon of October 8th, they were carefully removing the concrete wall behind the old boiler area. The plan was to make room for a new, energy-efficient heating system. David was breaking through the concrete wall with a sledgehammer when he noticed something strange and unexpected. Behind the thick wall was a small enclosed room that shouldn't exist. The architectural plans didn't show this space at all. "Wait," he told crew member Tom, who'd been working with him for 8 years. "There's a hidden area here. This isn't on any of the plans we have." When he fully broke through the wall, he saw a small basement room, about 5 feet wide, 7 feet long, like a small storage closet, completely sealed with no visible entrance, and inside, illuminated by his powerful work flashlight, a skeleton wearing a gray cardigan sweater, with a lanyard and ID badge still around the neck bones. Beside the skeleton lay a brown leather purse and scattered teaching books, all covered in decades of dust. David's hands trembled as he backed away. "My God! Call the police right now. Don't touch anything." Riverside Sheriff's Department was on scene within 20 minutes of the emergency call. 2 patrol cars arrived first, followed by Detective Sarah Chen's unmarked vehicle. Chen was 45 years old with 20 years of law enforcement experience. She knew small Wyoming towns well and understood their tight-knit communities. Forensic teams carefully examined the sealed area. Crime scene technicians photographed every angle, measured distances, collected samples. The skeleton was positioned in a standing position, leaning against the back wall. There was obvious blunt force trauma to the back of the skull, multiple impact points. Clothing remnants included a gray cardigan sweater, dark pants, and flat shoes. Around the neck hung a plastic ID badge reading Riverside Elementary, Emma Parker, 4th grade teacher. A wristwatch on the left wrist had stopped at exactly 8:15 p.m. "Teacher," Chen said, kneeling beside the remains. "Worked here. Let's look thoroughly into this school's complete history." School records were carefully examined over the next several hours. There was one significant missing person case in the files. Emma Parker, 24 years old, 4th grade teacher, disappeared November 12th, 2004. Chen opened the thick 2004 case file that had been stored in archives. Sheriff Robert Hayes had conducted the original investigation at that time. Hayes was now retired, but Chen called him that evening. Emma Parker, Hayes said slowly, 70 years old now. Never forgot that case. It haunted me for years. Wonderful teacher. The kids absolutely loved her. She disappeared one Friday night at school while preparing for conferences. We searched everywhere for months, found absolutely no trace. Any suspicious people at the time? Chen asked. Hayes paused. The assistant principal, Mark Stevens. He helped with searches, seemed concerned. No red flags. DNA comparison was done immediately. Emma's mother, Susan Parker, 69, still lived in Riverside, just a mile from the school. Reference sample provided. A week later, the result came back. Perfect match. The skeleton in the basement was Emma Parker. Emma Grace Parker was born in Wyoming on June 3, 1980, to loving parents. She grew up in Riverside, the youngest of two children. From a young age, she dreamed of becoming a teacher. She admired her third-grade teacher, Mrs. Wilson, and wanted to inspire children the same way. "I'll be like her someday," she'd tell her mother. After finishing high school with honors in 1998, she was accepted to the University of Wyoming College of Education. She graduated with her teaching certificate in 2002. She immediately started working at Riverside Elementary School as a fourth-grade teacher. She loved children deeply, created creative and engaging lessons, stayed late to help struggling students. Teaching isn't just a job, it's a passion and a calling, she'd tell her friends and family. In 2003, at age 23, she got engaged to David Cooper, son of a local rancher. They bought a small house on Maple Street, adopted a golden retriever named Bailey. They planned to marry in summer 2005. Emma was genuinely happy with her life and career. But there was something Emma didn't know. The assistant principal was becoming dangerously obsessed with her. Mark Stevens was born in Wyoming in 1966 in a troubled family. Young divorcee at 30, childless, lonely. In 1999, he started working at Riverside Elementary as assistant principal. He was a competent administrator, but socially isolated. When Emma started working at the school in 2002, Mark began to take interest in her. She was young, beautiful, energetic, full of life. Mark would find excuses to visit her classroom frequently, offer to help with her lesson plans, suggest coffee meetings. Emma was always polite, but clearly maintained professional distance. In fall 2004, Mark gathered his courage and decided to act. In October, after a staff meeting, he invited Emma to dinner directly. Emma politely but firmly declined. "Mark, I don't think that's appropriate at all. I'm engaged to David, and we're colleagues. I'm not interested." Mark was completely crushed. He'd built up hope over 2 years. The rejection turned his infatuation to obsession, then to rage. November 12th, 2004, Friday evening. Emma was working late in her fourth-grade classroom preparing materials. She had parent-teacher conferences scheduled for the following week and wanted everything perfect. Mark was also at school, supposedly finishing administrative paperwork in his office. At 8 p.m., Mark walked to Emma's classroom. "Emma, I'm sorry to bother you, but could you help me move some heavy boxes in the basement? They're too heavy for me to lift alone, and I need them moved tonight." Emma put down her pen immediately, always willing to help colleagues. "Sure, I'll help you." They walked down to the basement together. Mark led her to the area behind the old boiler system. It was dark and isolated. "Where exactly are the boxes?" Emma asked, looking around. Mark hesitated for just a moment, his heart pounding. Then he made his decision. Leaning against the wall was a heavy metal pipe. Mark grabbed it with both hands and struck Emma's head from behind with tremendous force. Emma fell to the concrete floor, shocked and confused. "Mark, why, what are you doing?" Mark, Now panicking, adrenaline surging, struck her again. Then again. Emma went completely still. Blood pooled on the floor. Mark dropped the pipe and checked her pulse with trembling hands. Nothing. Emma Parker was dead. Mark backed away, breathing heavily. What had he just done? He'd killed Emma, the woman who'd rejected him. But then cold reality hit. This was actually his solution. If Emma was permanently gone, no one could reject him anymore. No one could know what happened. Mark worked quickly through the night, driven by fear. In the basement, storage was an unused area behind the old boiler system, a small space that had been there since the building's construction. Mark dragged Emma's body into that dark space. Then he spent the next several hours building a solid concrete wall to seal it permanently. He found concrete blocks, mortar, tools in the maintenance room. He worked methodically until morning. By 5 a.m., the wall looked like it had been there for decades. Then he carefully organized Emma's classroom. He left everything exactly as it was. Lesson plans stacked on the desk, papers graded and organized, computers still logged in with a half-written email to a parent about a student's progress. It looked perfectly like Emma had simply stepped out for a moment and would return any second. In the early morning, Mark drove home, took a long, hot shower, and tried to sleep. But he couldn't sleep at all. Emma's face was in his mind. Her voice asking why echoed endlessly. But he told himself he had no choice now. It was done. At 9 a.m. the next morning, David Cooper tried calling Emma repeatedly about their weekend plans. No answer. He drove to the school, concerned. The classroom was locked, but Emma's silver Honda was still in the parking lot. Her brown purse was visible on the desk through the window. Her computer was on. But Emma wasn't there. David had a key and went inside. Everything was normal, except Emma was missing. David immediately called police, his voice panicked. Sheriff Hayes arrived within minutes. The school was thoroughly searched. Everything appeared completely normal except for one impossible fact. Emma Parker was missing without any explanation. Hayes questioned Mark extensively. "When did you last see Emma?" "Yesterday evening around 7, Mark said, seeming genuinely worried and upset. "She was working in her classroom preparing for conferences. I finished my paperwork and left around 8. Emma was still working. She often stays late." Searches were organized immediately. Police and volunteers combed the entire town. The surrounding wilderness areas were searched for days. Emma's car was examined. Nothing unusual. Her classroom was dusted for prints, only expected ones. Weeks passed, then months. No trace of Emma Parker anywhere. David was emotionally devastated. He broke off the engagement plans, unable to move forward. He eventually moved away from Riverside, unable to stay where Emma had vanished. Susan Parker refused to give up hope completely. "She'll come back someday," she'd say, though her voice grew less certain each year. Mark continued staying at the school. For years he worked as assistant principal, expressing sorrow about Emma, helping organize annual memorial assemblies. In 2010, he was promoted to principal. In 2012, he dedicated the renovated school library to Emma's memory. "Emma's legacy lives on," he said at the ceremony. Susan attended, crying, thanking Mark for remembering her daughter. For 21 years, Mark worked at Emma's school. Every single day, he walked past Emma's memorial photo in the main hallway. Every year, he spoke at assemblies about her dedication to teaching. He became respected in the community. But Emma's body was sealed just feet below the building, right beneath where children learned every day. Until October 2025. David Martinez's crew broke through that wall. Detective Chen worked closely with genetic genealogy specialist Dr. Lisa Wang from the State Crime Laboratory. Forensic analysis found trace DNA on Emma's bones and clothing. biological material Mark had inevitably left behind while moving her body. A detailed genetic profile was created. Dr. Wong uploaded the DNA profile to public genealogy databases. 3 weeks of careful analysis later, a match emerged. Mark Stevens. On October 28, 2025, Detective Chen arrived at Mark's house with 2 deputies. Mark opened the door, looking exhausted and older than his 59 years. Detective Chen, "I knew someone would come eventually," he said quietly. "Mr. Stevens, you're under arrest in connection with the murder of Emma Parker." Mark nodded slowly, no resistance. "I know. You found her. I've carried this for 21 years. Part of me is relieved." At the station, Mark requested an attorney, but then decided to confess fully. "I've lived with her ghost for 21 years, he told Chen, tears in his eyes. "Every day at school, walking past Emma's memorial photo, speaking about her dedication, knowing she was sealed right beneath the building. I didn't plan to kill her. I just got so angry when she rejected me. I'd hoped for 2 years, one moment of rage, but that moment cost Emma everything. Her life, her future wedding, her career, all the children she would have taught, and it cost me my soul." The confession was detailed and complete. That Friday night, the attack in the basement, building the wall, arranging her classroom, everything. When the news spread through Riverside, the small community was shocked and felt deeply betrayed. Mark Stevens, the respected principal who'd honored Emma's memory for 21 years, was her killer. Susan gave an emotional press statement. "My daughter trusted Mark, worked with him every day, thought he was a friend, and Mark murdered her because she rejected his advances. For 21 years, I attended every memorial ceremony, every dedication, thanking Mark for keeping Emma's memory alive. I supported and trusted my daughter's killer. The betrayal is unimaginable." The trial began in November 2025. Mark was charged with first-degree murder. His attorney tried to argue it wasn't premeditated, but the prosecutor was firm. The jury deliberated for 5 difficult days. Verdict: guilty of first-degree murder. At the sentencing hearing, Susan spoke through tears. "Mark built his entire career on my daughter's corpse, sealed in a basement. He lied every single day for 21 years. He smiled at me at ceremonies while Emma's body was beneath our feet. He deserves every day of his punishment and more." The judge announced the sentence: life in prison with possibility of parole after 25 years. Mark was 59 years old. He could apply for parole at age 84, though it was unlikely to ever be granted. Mark stood and faced the courtroom. "I deserve this sentence. Emma didn't deserve what I did. I wish desperately I could undo that night, but I can't. I'll spend whatever time I have left living with what I did." Riverside Elementary officially renamed the school library Emma Parker Memorial Library. A bronze plaque was installed. Emma Grace Parker, 1980 to 2004. Dedicated teacher who inspired generations of children, taken far too soon, never forgotten. Detective Chen said in media interviews, "Killers are sometimes the people we see and trust every day. Mark Stevens worked at that school for 21 years after killing Emma, speaking at her memorials. Without modern DNA technology and genetic genealogy, we might never have solved this case. Science brought justice for Emma. Riverside is slowly healing from the deep betrayal. The school continues to serve the community under new leadership. Emma's legacy of dedicated, passionate teaching lives on in the students whose lives she touched. If this story moved you, please subscribe and hit the like button. Comment which case you'd like us to investigate next.